When we first moved into the house, I noticed something strange. Looking out the back window, I saw him, a black and white cat sitting silently in the corner of the garden, staring at our house like he owned it. Every morning, without fail, he'd be there. Rain, snow, or sunshine, it didn't matter. It felt a little eerie at first, as though he were watching us, waiting for something. I'm Jen, and this is Dudley's story. The very first night after we moved in, I went downstairs late. It was around midnight, and there he was, sitting on the back doorstep as if he'd been summoned. He didn't look lost or scared. No, he looked determined. Determined to be right there at our house. I thought, all right, maybe he's just wandering through, but no. This cat was committed. The next day, I decided to knock on a few doors in the neighborhood, thinking someone must be looking for him. On the very first door I knocked, a man answered and said, "Oh, that's our cat." His name was Dudley. I told them Dudley had been practically living on our back doorstep, and they reassured me that he wasn't lost. Apparently, Dudley had free reign of the neighborhood and a perfectly good home to return to, complete with a cozy cat flap. They apologized, hoping he wasn't bothering us. I said, no, it's fine, and left it at that. But was it fine? Not really. You see, I've never been a cat person. I've always been allergic to both cats and dogs, so the idea of befriending Dudley wasn't exactly on my radar. In fact, I was determined to discourage him from coming around. I shooed him away, clapped my hands, even sprayed water near him. Nothing worked. Dudley just wouldn't take the hint. And then came the snowstorm. One freezing night, I looked out to see him sitting there, completely drenched, surrounded by snow. He had every opportunity to go back to his warm home, but instead, he sat shivering outside our house. Something about that moment made me pause. Why was this cat so determined to stay close to us? I couldn't explain it, but it tugged at my heart a little. For years, Dudley stuck around. Yes, years. At first, he kept his distance, simply watching us from the garden. But slowly, he started creeping closer, showing up while I was outside. One day, I sat in the garden with a book, and Dudley, bold as ever, jumped onto my lap and curled up. I froze. Allergies, remember? But to my shock, nothing happened. No sneezing, no watery eyes. It was as if my body had decided Dudley was the exception to the rule. From that day on, things started to change. Over time, Dudley became a fixture in our lives. I'd sit outside with a cup of tea, and there he'd be, ready for cuddles. He had this uncanny ability to make me feel like I was the center of his world. His gaze was so intense, it felt like he could see into my soul. I'd never experienced anything like it before. It was as if Dudley had chosen us long before we had a chance to choose him. One day, while clearing out the garage, we stumbled across something strange, an old painting left by the previous owners. It was of a black and white cat, eerily similar to Dudley. We couldn't figure out why it was there, but it felt significant. Like Dudley was somehow connected to this house in a way we couldn't understand. My husband joked that Dudley might be the reincarnation of the previous owner's cat, and honestly, it wasn't the most outlandish theory. As the years went by, our bond with Dudley deepened. We even wrote a letter to his owners, explaining that while we respected he was their pet, we'd be happy to take him in if they ever wanted to rehome him. They were touched but assured us they loved him and were glad we had this special friendship. So we carried on, content with our unusual arrangement. Then, in March 2020, just as the UK was entering lockdown, I received a text from Dudley's owner. Their circumstances were changing, and they were worried about moving Dudley away from the only area he'd ever known. They asked if we'd consider officially adopting him. I burst into tears. It was an easy decision. Dudley had already claimed our hearts and our home. This was just making it official. From that moment, Dudley became ours in every way. He's been a part of our family ever since, bringing joy, comfort, and a touch of magic to our lives. There's something about Dudley that feels otherworldly, like he knows more than he lets on. His presence is grounding yet mysterious, and I can't imagine life without him. Funny enough, I'm still allergic to other cats. If I visit my sister's house, I need antihistamines and my asthma inhaler. But with Dudley, nothing. It's like my body decided he's special. And he is. Dudley has taught me so much about love, patience, and connection. Before him, I never imagined being a cat person. Now, I can't imagine life without him. What an empty existence it would have been without Dudley, the cat who chose us before we even knew we needed him.